Hey, what's up everyone? So in this video, we are going to cover everything that you need to know about JavaScript arrays and array methods so that you can start building your dream project using arrays. So we will cover the arrays core concepts, and also we will cover the 18 most common array methods. We will look at some array methods which we can use to add or remove elements in an array. So we have these array methods which we can use to either add or remove elements in an array. Also, we'll look at some array methods which we can use to perform search in an array, and we will cover an array method which we can use to iterate through the elements. And finally, we will cover some array methods which we can use to transform the original array. Also, we will take a look at queue and stack data structure in arrays. So in case you're new here, my name is Charles. I'm a JavaScript developer and I create coding content here on YouTube. If you like the content in this video, please remember to leave a thumbs up and also support my channel by subscribing. Also let me know what you think about this video at the comment section below. We use arrays to store ordered collection of elements in form of a list, and arrays provide various methods which we usually use to manage that list. And there are two syntax for creating an array, and the first one is by using a constructor, and this is how we can make use of it. So first of all, we need to define a variable for our array. For example, let's say we want to store a collection of fonts. So I can have a variable called fonts. So I'll use let fonts be equal to, and then now right here, I can create a new array using the array constructor. So I'll say new array, and then I'll invoke it just like that. And this way, we have created an empty array of fonts. So right here, if we log fonts to the console, we'll see that we have an empty array. Now, when I save this is our output right here at the terminal. And you'll see that we have two square brackets right here. And these two square brackets represent an empty array because they don't have anything inside. Now, there is a shorter syntax for creating an array, and that is actually just using two square brackets. So I can just remove this one and include two square brackets. And this way, we have created an empty array of fonts as well. So if I save this one, we'll still have the same output. And there we go. Now, how can we add some initial elements to our array? So adding initial elements to our array is very easy. I can just use some quotes to represent that this is a string, and I can say Samsung, and this is the first element for our array. And then I can add another element by including a comma, and then I can include some space just for readability. It doesn't have any effect on the array. And then I can have the other array element. So I can say iPhone, and I can proceed with this as far as I can, but in this case I'll just have 3 of them. So let us have Oppo. Now when I save this one, you'll see that now our array is having 3 elements in it. Now array elements are numbered from 0. So Samsung right here is at position 0, the iPhone right here is at position 1, and Oppo at position 2. Now these positions in array, they are called indexes. So we can say that Samsung is having an index of 0, iPhone an index of 1. Now these indexes are very important because we can use them to access each of these array elements. So for example, let us say we want to access iPhone. We can say right here, fonts, the name of the array, and then we use some square brackets, and in here we include the index of that specific element, and iPhone here is at index 1. So if right here I include index 1 and we log this to the console, we will get iPhone on the console. So when I save this one, we get iPhone at our console or terminal, which is really cool. Now the index is also important because we can use it to replace an array element. So Let us say we no longer want iPhone right here, but we want to include a different array element. Let's say techno. So how we can replace that is by accessing the array element using the index. So I'll say phone at index 1. Actually, it's phones. This is the name of the array. And we'll set this one to techno. And when I save this and log the fonts on the console, you will see that we will no longer have iPhone, but that will be replaced by Tecno. So now we have Samsung, Tecno, and then Oppo. So that's how you can like replace an array element using the index. Another thing is that we can make use of the index to add a new element to our array. So let's say we want to maintain our list here, but add Tecno as a new array element. So how we can do that is by noting the indexes that we have right here. We have 0, 1, 2. Now at index 3, we can add Tecno. And that way, we will have 4 array elements. So when I save this one, you will see that Tecno will be added as a new array element. And it does not like replace any of these. So that is how you can like use the index to add a new array element. Now we have a way of accessing the number of elements that we have in our array, and that is called the length. So if we get fonts.length, just like that, we will get the number of elements that we have in our array, and in this case it's 4. But now the correct definition of length is the highest index in our array plus 1. So in this case, the highest index will be 3. And then when we add 1 to it, then we will have 4. And that will give us 4 array elements. And in some cases, we might have empty elements in our array. For example, if we jump 3 here, and let's say we go to 5. So this means that we have 0, 1, 2, and then we will have some empty elements until we get to 5, and at 5 we will have Tecno. But the length will not consider that those are empty elements. They will be counted as array elements as well, and we will get right here the highest index, which is 5, and then we will add 1 to it, and it will give us 6, even though in real sense we have only 4 of them. So you need to take note of that. So when I save this one, you will see that these will output 6. Now you are not supposed to have empty elements in your array. Those are considered as holes because some functionality of the arrays are lost. Like the array methods will behave differently when we have holes or empty elements in our array. So please avoid having empty elements in your arrays. And when I log phones to the console, we have Samsung, iPhone, Oppo, and then we have 2 empty items or elements, and then we have Tecno. So please avoid having empty items in your array because these are considered as holes, and array methods will behave differently when you have holes in your array. Now, to avoid these holes, instead of adding array elements directly using an index, we usually have some array methods which we can use to add and remove array elements either at the end here or at the beginning here. So let us begin with at the beginning here. Let us see how we can add Tecno at the beginning of our array. So right here, I can just say fonts, and we have an array method called unshift. So if I say fonts.unshift and then I invoke it and pass Tecno in here, this Tecno will be added at the beginning of the array element, and we don't have to master the indexes and stuff, and that way we'll never have holes in our array. So when I save this one, you'll see that we will have Tecno at the beginning of the array. So that is how we can add an array element at the beginning, and this is how we can remove an array element which is at the beginning. So we can say fonts dot shift. So we have this array method called shift, which is used to remove an array element at the beginning of the array. So if I say, okay, actually we don't include anything when we are working with shift. We just say fonts dot shift and then we call that method and it will remove the first element. So when I save, you'll see that techno will now be removed from the array element. And if we didn't have this one, you'll see that Samsung will be removed from the array element and will remain with two of them. Now we have iPhone and Oppo. But if we have this one, we are just adding techno at the beginning and then removing it. So that is how we can like add and remove an array element at the beginning here. But what about at the end here? So let me comment out this one and let's see how we can do at the end. So we can have fonts and we have an array method called push, and this will add an array element at the end of the array. So let us add techno, and then when I save that, you'll see that techno will be added at the end here. And how can we remove that? We can say fonts dot pop. So we have this pop array method that removes an array element from the end here. So when I save, you'll see that techno will now be removed from the array method. So we have these array methods, which are the most basic ones for adding and removing array elements. We have unshift, shift, push, and pop. And with these array methods, we actually now support two types of data structures which are available in computer science. And those two data structures is queue. So let me add them right here. We have queue, and also we have what we call a stack. So a queue supports two operations. We add elements at the end here, and when we remove an element, we remove them at the beginning of the array. And that supports a principle called FIFO, which says first in, the first element to enter the array is the first one that will be removed. So first in, first out. Okay. So adding an element in the array, we usually make use of push, and then to remove the element at the beginning of the array, we make use of shift. So these two array methods satisfies the queue data structure in computer science. And then for stack, it supports a principle called LIFO, last in, first out. So the last element to enter in the array is the first one that will be removed. And how do we like enter an element at the end here? We use push, and then we remove that particular element at the end using pop. So the last element to enter is the last one to be removed. So these two data structures are nicely supported by our arrays in JavaScript, and they are so popular in computer science. So that is it about these array methods for adding and removing some elements in our array. Now let me show you how you can loop through our items. So to loop through our items, we have these. We have for of loop. So I can write it like this. We have what we call for of loop, which can loop through our items. So let us make use of it right here. We can say for, and then we invoke it like this, and then we create a variable for each item, like let font of, and then fonts. So fonts now is our array right here, and this font is just a variable that we are creating, which will represent each item. And then now in here, we can make use of this font, maybe output each item on our terminal. So instead of logging all the fonts, I log each font at a time. So I'll say console.log of font. Now when I save, you'll see that we'll have each of them being outputted just like this. So you can make use of for of loop to loop over our array of fonts, which is really nice. Now let us take a look at what we call multidimensional array. So with the multidimensional array, we can have arrays inside an array. And let me give you an example. So for example, let us say instead of iPhone right here, we want to list different iPhones that we have. We have iPhone 12, iPhone 13, iPhone 13 Pro, and so on. So in this case, we will have an array in here, which is now inside an array, and we can say iPhone 12, and then we can add another array element, iPhone 13, and so on and so forth. So the point is we have an array inside an array, and when we log this to the console, you'll see that we have this array, and then inside our array at index 1 we have another array with some elements. So how can we access those elements? How we can access those elements is by accessing the index for this array, which is at index 1. So this is at index 0, this array is at index 1. So right here we'll say 1, and then we can now access another index for a specific element. Let's say iPhone 13. So now this will be index 0 for this array which is in here, and then this one will be index 1. So we'll say 1 1, and we'll change them like this, and this way we'll be able to access iPhone 13. So when we log this to the console, we should have iPhone 13 on the console, and there we go. Pretty nice. Now, as you can see now with our arrays here, we can actually like include any data type that we want. So in this case, we have two data types. We have a string, and also we have an array inside an array. We can as well have a number. So right here we can have 2, and these will still like work out. So if we log it to the console the way it is, you'll see that no errors, and we have our 2 here, which is a number. You can as well have objects. So right here you can as well have objects, and let's say name be Oppo. So you have the key and value pair of our objects. So when I log this to the console, you'll see that our object is still working. You can also have the Boolean types. So you can have any type that you want to have in your array. And when we save this one, you'll see that we still have our Boolean right there, which is pretty nice. So arrays are some complex data structures in JavaScript, and they help us to list some items, and we usually make use of it a lot. For example, when creating a real-world application, you might have a list of users, a list of posts, a list of comments, and so on and so forth. Now, another thing that I want to mention before we move to the array methods is that two arrays with the same elements and length are never equal. So what do I mean by that? So if we have two arrays with the same elements, so let me say that we have, actually let me change even the variable here and say, let us say we have an array of numbers, and we have 1, 2, and 3, and then we have another array which is having the same elements and the same length of elements. So right here, let us say we have let digits be equal to 1, 2, 3, and what this will do is that you might think that our nums here is equal to our digits here, but it will never be equal. So if we log nums is equals to digits, you'll notice that we will get false on our console. So at our terminal here, we are getting false, meaning that this nums is not equal to digits, and it will never be equal even though we have the same number of elements and the same elements in our array. And what is happening is that these two arrays are being created on a separate memory location. So they are being created on a separate memory space, and they are not primitive types. So actually an array is considered as an object. It is built on top of an object. And also as well as functions. Functions are also considered as objects, and they'll never be equal even though they seem to be equal. They are not primitive types. They are created on a different memory space. And if we want them to be equal, maybe we set digits to be equal to nums right here directly, just like this. And when we do this, we say that nums and digits are referencing the same array in our memory. And when we do this way, now the two are equal. And why are they equal? They are pointing to the same array in memory. But when we have two of them, they are pointing at different arrays in memory, okay? And that is the same when it comes to normal objects, just like this way. Normal objects are never equal. And when I save this one, you'll see that this is false because now these are two different objects in memory. And the same way we'll go for our functions. So functions are actually considered as objects and they are called function objects. So this one will never be equal as well because they reference different functions in memory. So when I save that, we'll still get false on our console. But for primitive types like numbers, if we say 2 and if we say 2 here, we are referencing to the same 2 in memory. Like the number 2 is not being changed or anything. It's already there. We are not even creating it. It's already there. We are just pointing to it. But with functions, objects and arrays, we are creating them each time and we are pointing them to a different array or a function or an object. So with the primitive types, these will return true because these two is the same one in memory. So that is like very important to understand, and that is the main difference between the primitive types and non-primitive types. Okay, so now I want us to take a look at the different array methods that we can use to manage our list of items. And we have already taken a look at 4 of them. We have taken a look at push, pop, shift, and unshift. We use push to add an element or an item or a list of items at the end of the array. And then we make use of pop to remove an item from the end of the array. Then we make use of shift to remove an item at the beginning of the array. And we use unshift to add an item at the beginning of our array, or even a list of items at the beginning of the array. And these array methods are either used to add or remove items from our array here, okay? And we have 3 other array methods which we can use to either add or remove items from our array. And we are going to take a look at them in a minute. So right here, we will have splice, and then we'll also take a look at slice, and also we'll take a look at concat. And these are the other 3 array methods which we can use to either add or remove an element in our array, okay? Let us take a look at the slice array method. So right here, let me just include some notes, and we can use this, actually not slice but splice, sorry, they are so like similar in pronunciation here. And we can use the splice array method to perform 3 operations. We can add elements or an element in the array. We can also remove, and we can as well replace some elements in our array. So this splice is one of the most powerful array method because you see it can be able to perform multiple operations, and it's actually very easy to use. Let us start with remove because it's easier and it will make sense like immediately. So right here, let us say we want to remove iPhone. So how the splice array method works, we just say fonts, and then we say dot splice, and then we invoke this array method, and it will accept several arguments. Now the first argument is the beginning of where we want to remove the element or the start, okay? So the start, let's say we want to remove iPhone here, so the start will be 0 1, so it will be 1 here. And then the second argument will be the number of items that we want to remove from there onwards. So actually let us add another one here. let's add Oppo, just like that. And right here, when we say remove two elements, it will remove iPhone and Oppo. So for now, let me comment out this, and when I save, you'll see that our output here will have Samsung, iPhone and Oppo. But when we include the splice here, we will remove iPhone and Oppo. So when I save, you'll see now we have Samsung on the console only. So it has removed two items. So this is the start where we want to begin our deletion, and then this is the number of items that we want to remove from there onwards, okay, which is pretty nice, and it usually return the removed elements. Okay, so this one, when we say const removed, like we create a variable for the removed elements, the removed elements iPhone and Oppo will be included in our removed here. So instead of logging fonts on the console here, let me log removed. And when we save, you'll see that iPhone and Oppo will be included in our removed our variable right there. So we have iPhone and Oppo. So splice returns the removed elements. Now that is how we can like remove. So how can we add an element? So if we just want to add an element, what we can do is that, let's say we want to add starting at position 1. So we'll say starting at position 1, let us remove 0 elements, and then it accepts a third argument for adding an element. Let's say we want to add techno at position 1. So techno will be added at position 1. So now we will have 4 elements. So let's log fonts on the console. Now when I save this one, you'll see that we have 4 elements on our output: Samsung, Techno, iPhone and Oppo. And that is how we can add an element using the splice array method. Now how can we replace an element? So how we can replace an element is to first remove it, and then we add another one. So for example, let us remove iPhone. Starting at position 1, let us remove iPhone, and then let us add Techno. That way we will just replace iPhone. So when I save, you'll see that we have Samsung, Techno, Oppo. We no longer have iPhone. We have like replaced it with Techno. And you can actually like add multiple of them. So right here, we can also say Huawei. Is Huawei written this way? And when we save, you'll see that we can be able to add multiple elements starting at position 1. When I save, you'll see now we have Techno, Huawei, Oppo. But we don't have iPhone because we have removed it. If we don't want to remove it, we say remove 0 of them. And when we save, now we have all the elements and we add Techno and Huawei. So that is how we can use splice to either add, remove or replace elements in our array. Now let us take a look at slice. Okay, so we use slice to either copy an array or to create a sub array. Okay, so we use slice to do two things: to either copy this array into a new array, and then we can use it to create a sub array. A sub array is to take a portion of the array and then we include it in a different variable. So right here, let us like create a copy of fonts. It's very easy. We can say let's say fonts copy, and we'll just set it to fonts, and then we call the slice array method. So if I call the slice array method like this, we have created a copy of our fonts. Right here, when I log fonts copy and save, you'll see that we have Samsung, iPhone and Oppo. Now when do we need to copy an array? We need to copy an array when we want to manipulate the array, but we don't want to change the original array. So maybe we want this one to remain constant, but we want to have a similar array and manipulate it and change the elements, but we don't want to change this one. That is the case when we need to copy an array. And also we can create a sub array. Let us create a sub array here, and I'll say some fonts, and I want to copy iPhone and Oppo into a new array. So how we can do that is to say fonts.slice, and then we give the start position. The start position will be now be 1, so 0, 1, and then we give the end position, and the end position will be, so now right here we'll have 0, 1, 2. But now, since we are copying up to position 2, the end position right here will be 3, because we want to include oppo. And how this works is that it will not include the end position, okay? So it will include the 1 position, and then it will include the 2 position, but it will not include the 3 position. So it will not include 3. It will copy from 1 to 3, but not including 3. So in that case, it will just copy iPhone and Oppo. So that is how the slice array method works. And if we log some fonts on the console, some fonts, you'll see that we'll have iPhone and Oppo at our console. So I'll save that and let's see. And there we go, iPhone and Oppo. So the slice array method accepts 2 arguments, the start position and the end position, but it does not include the end position, okay? Cool. Now let's see how we can make use of concat. So the concat array method is used to combine arrays, okay? So concat is used to combine arrays. So concat array method combines arrays, and we can have 2 arrays right here. For example, let us have phones, Samsung. Let us have Oppo. For example, we can say these are Android phones. So let's have Android like that. And now right here, let us have iPhones. So I can say let iPhones be equal to a new array, and we can have iPhone 12, and also we can have iPhone 13. So let's say we want to combine these 2 arrays. We can make use of the concat array method, and this is how we can do it. So we can like have a new array. So we can say let fonts be equal to, now we take Android, maybe any of these arrays. So I'll say Android, and then I'll say dot concat. So now this is our array method, and we invoke it. And then in here we can add the other array that we want to combine with our Android array. So in here we can pass our iPhones, just like that. And now fonts right here will have both Android and iPhones. So if we log fonts on the console, just like that, you'll see that we'll have 4 elements. So when I save, we should have 4 elements at our terminal: Samsung, Oppo, iPhone, and also iPhone 13, iPhone 12 and iPhone 13. So that is how we can make use of concat to combine 2 arrays, okay? Which is pretty nice. So now I have created our array of fonts again right here, and I want us to take a look at an array method that we can use to iterate through our items or loop through them. Remember earlier we looked at the forOf loop, but we also have an array method that we can use to iterate through the items. And the good thing with this array method, it also gives us access to the index and also the array itself. So right here we have what we call the forEach array method, and this is how we can make use of it. We just say fonts, and then when we say dot forEach, you can see it's suggested, and we invoke it, and now it have access to a function. So I can use an arrow function right here, and this function it have several parameters. It has the item, it has the index, and also it has the array itself. And now we can make use of the item, the index, and the array itself to return something right here. And we can just say console.log of the item. So console.log of the item, and this will list all the items one by one. When I save, you'll see that we can be able to list our items right here, just like that. And also if we say item, and also we like include the index, so let's say index and then a comma and then the item, so we'll have both the index and the item. So when I save, you can see we are including the index and the item like this. Now let's take a look at some array methods which we can use to perform searching in our array. So the first array method that we'll take a look at is an array method that we can use to get the index of an item in our array. So that array method is called indexOf, okay? And this is how we can use it. So I'll just remove the entire of this, and I can just like use it directly like right here. So right here we can log fonts dot indexOf, and then we invoke it, and let's say we want to get the index of iPhone. So we can just pass iPhone in here. So I'll copy iPhone and I'll paste it here. And these will get the index of our iPhone, which is at index 0, 1. So we should log 1 at the console. So when I save, we should get 1 on the console. And there we go. Awesome. But now you will realize that we have two iPhone, this one and this one. So what if we don't want to like include this one, but this one? As you can see, it's like returning the first item that it finds. So we have a second parameter right here, or argument, that we can include so that we start the search from this position, like after this position. So 0, 1. So we can start the search from 2. So when I say 2, you'll see that now it will return this one, which is at position 0, 1, 2, 3. So it should log 3 at the console. So when I save, we get 3. Alternatively, we can start the search from this side. And in such a case, we have what we call lastIndexOf array method. So instead of using indexOf, we can make use of lastIndexOf. And this will start the search from this side, from the end here. Therefore, it will still return 3 when I save. So when I save, we'll still get 3 at our console. And they all have the same syntax, the indexOf and lastIndexOf. And another array method that has a similar syntax is called the includes array method. But the difference is that the includes array method either return true or false. So if we don't want to have the index, we just need to know whether it's true, that item exists or not, we make use of includes. So right here, we can just say includes. And when I save, it will return true since we have iPhone at our array. So when I save, we get true. If we include something that does not exist, then it will return false, just like that. And another thing, if we try to find an index of an array that does not exist, indexOf and lastIndexOf usually return -1, okay? So that is good to note. So these are some of the array methods, indexOf, lastIndexOf, and includes, which we can use to perform a check and see whether an item exists or not, or to get a specific index of that item, okay? Now, in case of objects, we usually have some other array methods which we can make use of so that we can like perform a check. So for example, let us say that we have an array of fonts, but these fonts are in form of objects. So now right here, we have an array of objects, and we have some array methods that are good at finding items which are in form of objects, and we always make use of objects all the time. And the array method that we'll take a look at is the findArray method. So right here, instead of just saying fonts, I can say, actually I'll come at the top here, and I'll make use of the findArray method. I'll say fonts dot find, and then these will have access to a function just like this, and this function have the item, it has the index, and also it has the array itself. And then right here we can be able to perform a check. So let's say we want to return an item that has an ID of 3. So right here we can just say item dot ID is equals 2, 3. So when this is true, that particular item will be returned by our findArray method, and we can store that item on a variable. So I can say let font be equal to fonts.find, then we iterate through them and perform this check for each of them, and we can log that font on the console. So I log it the console, and you'll see that we will have this object at our console. So console.log of font, and there we go. Now we are returning Oppo because that is the one that satisfies this condition. So if we had an item of 2 and save an ID of 2, that is, we get iPhone. Now the thing with find is that it only returns the first element that it finds. So if we had a similar one that had the same ID, you'll notice that it will only return the first one that it finds. So when I save, you'll see that we will get iPhone still. We don't get Techno even though they are having the same ID. So if you want to return multiple items that satisfy the condition, we usually make use of the filter array method. Okay, so right here, if we say fonts.filter, it have the same syntax, and those items that satisfies this condition will be included in our font right here in form of an array. So we'll have an array of 2 items now. So when I save, you see we have an array of 2 items that satisfies this condition, and that is the main difference between filter and find. Filter, we return multiple items, while find, we return only 1 item. And we also have the findIndex array method, and this findIndex usually returns the index of a specific item that satisfies the condition. So right here, if I say findIndex, it will have a similar syntax, but now it will not return the item, but it will return the index. In this case, it will return 0, 1. It should return 1 at the console. So when I save, we get 1 at the console. So that is the main difference between find, filter, and findIndex. Find, we return the first item that was found. Filter, we return all the items that satisfies the condition right here. And findIndex, we return just the index. So let us have a cool example of filter. Sometimes we usually make use of filter to delete an item from an array. Okay, so let me remove the duplication here, and let us delete an item using filter. So I'll say filter, and now how we do it is that right here we will just use our fonts array right here, and we log it to the console, but we want to delete an item that will satisfy a specific condition. So we will say let's say we want to delete iPhone. Okay, so if we want to delete iPhone, we will say item.id is not equal to 2. So what does this do? What this does is that it will iterate through our items, and then it will perform a check. Does item.id not equal to 2 for Samsung? So that will be true, right? So if it's true, that item will be returned in our array right here, and then it will go to the next one. Does item.id not equal to 2? In this case, they are equal, but now this will return false since you are performing a not equal operation. So this iPhone will not be pushed to our fonts right here. And then we will go to the next one. Does ID of 3 not equal to 2? That is true. If it's true, it's pushed right here. So now we will only have Oppo and Samsung at our output and not iPhone. So when I save, you'll see that we have ID of 1 and ID of 3, which is Oppo. We don't have our iPhone right here since it returns false right here. If it returns false, it is not pushed to our array. And that is how you can use the filter method to delete an item, and you'll always see these in action in real world applications. Now I want us to take a look at some array methods which we can use to transform the original array. Okay, and let me just list them. We'll take a look at the map method. We will also take a look at the sort method. We will take a look at the reverse method, and finally we'll take a look at the reduce array method. Now, with the map method, we can iterate through the original array and we can transform it and return a new array. So let's have an example of the map array method. We can just take our array and we call the map method, and we will call a function for each of the item, one after another. So right here I have an item, and let's say I can take each item and add 2 to it. So I can say item plus 2, and this map method will return an array of the result. So right here we can like store that in a variable. So I can say let result be equal to array dot map, and then we do that, and I can log the result on the console. So I can say console dot log of the result, just like that. And now when I save, you'll see that we will have a new array which has been returned by our map method as the result, and we have added 2 to each of these items. Now let's take a look at the sort array method. So the sort array method will sort the items in order. So right here, if I say r.sort and I just call it like that and log the result to the console, you'll see that we will organize our items right here. We are having 1, 3, 2. Now we have 1, 2, 3. So one thing that you need to notice that this one will be in form of strings, and for that reason sometimes the sort might give you false output. For example, if I include 15 right here, you'll see that 15 will appear just after 1. So when I save, you'll see we have 1, 15, 2, 3, because it will compare them as strings. So for us to like fix that, we usually pass some form of a function right here, but because you will like rarely use the sort method, so I won't get into that. But I wanted you to note that you might face this issue, so that you be aware of it. Okay, and then we have like the reverse array method, which will reverse our array right here. So let's use reverse, and now we'll start with 15 and end with 1. So when I save, now we have 15, 2, 3, 1. Now let us take a look at the reduce array method. So this is the syntax of the reduce array method, and the reduce array method will have two parameters. The first one is a function which will be called for each array item, and then the other one is an initial value. Now, to begin with, the accumulator here will be equal to the initial value, and then on the second iteration, the accumulator will be equal to the result of the previous iteration. Okay, so we will see an example so that you understand this. And then the item is the current item, the index is the index of that item, and the array is the array right here. So in most cases, we will not use array and index. We will just need the accumulator and the item and also the initial value. Now, one of the application of the reduce array method is like finding the subtotal of a shopping cart, like finding the total price of the items that are available in the shopping cart. And I want us to like use it in a similar way, where we will find the total of these particular numbers. Like we will find the sum of these numbers using the reduce array method. So to begin with, we need to set the initial value. So right here, if we set the initial value to be 0, now the accumulator will be 0 when we start the iteration. And then on the second iteration, the accumulator will be the result of whatever we will do right here. So right here, we should return something, okay? And what we will return the accumulator plus the item. Okay, and when we do this, what will happen is that our reduce will iterate through our items right here, and it will add all of them and give us the total. In this case, the total will be 15 plus 2, 17 plus 3. That will be 20 plus 1, that will be 21. So we should get 21 on the console. So when I save, we are getting 21 on the console. Now let's try and figure out how these have come along. So the first iteration, accumulator will be 0. And then we will get the current item, which will now be 1. So we'll get 0 plus 1, and that will be 1. On the second iteration, the accumulator will now be that 1, that total that we get. So it will be 1. And then we get the current item, which is now 3. So 1 plus 3 will be 4. On the next iteration, now the accumulator will be that total, which is 4, and then it will add it to 2. So we'll get 4 plus 2, which will be 6. And then on the other iteration, now the accumulator will be 6, and then we'll get 6 plus 15, and we will get 21. So that is how the reduce array method works. And we have now covered the most common array methods, all of these, and I actually think there are 14 right here, and you'll most likely need to use only these array methods, and you won't need the rest 99% of the times. So when you understand these, you are good to go. So thank you for watching. If you like the video, please remember to leave a thumbs up, and I'll see you on the next one.